that competing firm happened to be the Cochran firm, like Johnnie Cochran. If the glove doesn't fit, you must have quit. So the month that I found out I was having a son was the same month. So my husband is sending me into the office to say, hey, I'm resigning. I'm going to take some time off. And then my mentor is like, hey, but do you want the firms? I called my husband during my lunch break, they're giving me the firm.
Absolutely wild origin story for Shannon Worthy's firm. My guest today, this is how to start and run a law firm. I'm Mark Lyda. It's a cold and snowy day in Denver, Colorado. And speaking of colds, I have one. So you're going to have to deal with a stuffed up voice from me today. Apologies for that, but I think you're really going to enjoy this episode with Shannon Worthy. She talks about how her firm came to be. It's a great story, as I mentioned, but also what stands out about this episode to me is the empathy that Shannon has for her clients. I think this helps her be a good lawyer in serving them, but it also helps her in marketing. She understands her clients, what they're thinking about, when they're thinking about it, what their life is like. And that's what helps her grow her practice. So there's a lot to learn from that. Let's dive in. Shannon Worthy is one of the owners and managing attorneys of Stanton and Worthy LLC in Atlanta, Georgia. She graduated from Spelman College with a bachelor's in English, a great major for a lawyer, by the way. She attended North Carolina Central University School of Law, did various internships in a variety of areas, trying out a bunch of different practice areas, and eventually fell in love with bankruptcy and consumer finance cases, which is where she now focuses her practice exclusively. I met her at a gathering of attorneys who accept legal insurance, so that's something we'll talk about as well. Let's launch in. I want to know about your thought process leading up to starting your firm.
I think I always wanted to have my own practice. Even going into law school, that was probably the thought process for myself. I knew I didn't necessarily want to work for anyone for an extended period of time. So that was always at the forefront of my mind, I should say. I guess getting into it, I worked initially for a bankruptcy firm right out of law school. And then I got poached by a competing firm. And that competing firm happened to be the Cochran firm. They were developing their bankruptcy division. They weren't doing bankruptcy, like Johnnie Cochran. If the glove doesn't fit, you must have quit. So they wanted to develop their bankruptcy division. And it was two white men out of Alabama who were developing the division. And they wanted to start it in the Atlanta market. So I was poached by them. They happened to see me in court. Why they were in court, I will never know. I guess they were trying to poach people. I ended up going, very lucrative. The offer was great. And I had the opportunity to help develop something, really kind of sink my teeth and develop their bankruptcy division, essentially. They served as my mentors unofficially. And that is important because Mike Brock, being one of the gentlemen out of Dothan, Alabama, he really took me under his wing. He had two children. Neither one of them wanted to be lawyers. So he kind of treated me like his daughter. And he was just like, okay, one day I'm going to leave this to you. But he would always talk about it in between chewing tobacco, right? And I didn't think much about it until I think during that time, my now husband, we were engaged, or were we married? I don't know. We might have been married. I think we were married. And we were trying to start a family. All of the things at the same exact time of trying to. And I had the thought hey, I'm going to have the baby. I don't want to have the baby and continue to work for anyone. Maybe I need some time off. And my husband agreed and was just yeah, maybe you need to step away from practicing for maybe a year or so. And then when you go back, you can, we'll start your own practice. So I went in to tell my mentor / the partner of the firm that day. And when I got there, I called him and he was like, okay, come to my office. And he was like, I wanted to talk to you anyway. And he's chewing tobacco. And I tell this all the time. I call him my fairy godmother, but I shouldn't do that because he is a huge white man that chews tobacco towers over you. And he gets so upset when I say that. And he's like, oh, I wanted to talk to you anyway. And I'm like, damn, was he going to fire me because I recently told him I was pregnant or something? All of these thoughts. And he was just like, yeah, I don't like Atlanta. I want to go back to Alabama. So do you want the firm? Yeah. And I was going into
Whoa.
quit essentially like, hey, I'm having a baby. I want to take some time off. So, and I'm like, and he was like, this is what you wanted, right? And I'm like, it is, but can I think about it? And he was just like, what is there to think about? You know? And I'm like, there isn't much to think about, but let me talk to my husband about it. He was like, okay, cool. I called my husband during my lunch break, like, they're giving me the firm. I don't think I can take any time off. He was like, what do you mean they're giving you the firm? And explained it to him. And the rest is pretty much history. So he kind of mentored me as it pertains to, he was just like, hey, you know, I know it's the Cochran firm, but I think you should find a partner and you all should start your own thing, right? And because essentially the Cochran firm, it was theirs. So I was essentially the partner with them. He was like, but you should have your own practice. You run them simultaneously, and at some point, your horse in the race will be bigger than their horse in the race and run faster. And you just kind of dwindle the cases down from the Cochran firm bankruptcy division. I'm like, okay. So he assisted me with like doing that. And that's how Stanton and Worthy was developed. So we stopped taking cases under Cochran, and all of the cases went to Stanton and Worthy, and all the cases that we had with Cochran, we saw them out through from cradle to grave with bankruptcy, but they wanted to kind of like phase the bankruptcy division out. Again, they were from Alabama. Atlanta is a little hostile when it comes to bankruptcy, the judges, the trustees, and they just didn't like the temperament here. So it was always the goal to make a lot of money, and he made a shit ton of money from the Atlanta market. And once he made, and he was, you know, he was very frank with me. He was like, I made $1 million plus, like in his pockets, you know, like I made that and I'm ready to just go back to Dothan. And he did. But he set me up in like such a great way. That's something that you can only dream of. Was it hard? Yes, because I was also pregnant at the time. So it was like really difficult. It was like birthing a child and then also birthing a firm as well. And they're kind of similar.
What?
Yeah.
So what? This is an amazing story, by the way. I didn't know this. When did this all happen?
So the month that I found out I was having a son, it was like the same month. Like, so my husband is sending me into the office to say, hey, I'm resigning. I'm going to take some time. And then my mentor is like, hey, but do you want the firm? So here we have it.
How fast did it happen after that conversation when, you know, until when you were like shouldering all the responsibility?
I would say maybe six to 8 months. And it was like, 6 to 8 months. The transition process started immediately. And he kind of showed me everything from like the trust accounts, because we had to transfer everything to my name, like the actual LLP to my name, as you know, the trust accounts, the operating accounts, all of the things with the bankruptcy court, like, oh, this is the leading attorney for the Cochran firm now, changes of addresses, all of the things. So the transition for the business side took 6 to 8 months. But because I was already in the role as managing attorney, nothing changed. I knew all of the clients. I was already managing the staff. I think what changed during that transition, instead of working in the business, I was now working on the business. And that's the side that I think most lawyers getting into, like starting their own practice, you don't necessarily know. You know how to work on your craft. You know the law. You know how to practice. But the actual business side of it, that's what he was teaching me. So I had like a crash course, 6 to 8 months, like, oh, this is how you run payroll. And this is what it takes to figure out what insurance you guys will actually need. And this is what it takes when all of the business stuff that you don't see when you come into a law office and you want to retain an attorney. You don't see what the machine is behind it, keeping the actual business right.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so that's great that you mentioned that, because that's the idea of this podcast, is that our listeners are the people needing to learn and trying to learn that very fast right now.
This podcast is presented by Practiced, modern law practice management software. We built Practiced at my firm because we were tired of fighting our software. Workarounds, clunky systems, way too much admin. So we built our own, and it cut our admin time by over 70%. Practiced makes running a law firm feel lighter. Intake is fast. Engagement letters just work. Time, tasks, and expenses stop piling up. And Practiced's AI assistant can do anything a human assistant can do inside the system. You can also hand it your messy notes, forms, or questionnaires, and it generates clean, polished documents using your templates. Or just forward an email and a new matter appears. Practiced even helps you get more clients through marketing and advanced referral network features. Everything works right out of the box, no separate software for intake and case management, one system, no duct tape. And it's just $20 a month. All features, no add-ons, no nickel and diming. Get started in minutes at practiced.io. That's practist.io.
What did you learn from that process that you think all new firm founders should know?
Accountant, you need someone to be doing like your accounting, especially when you're an attorney and when there's a trust account, right? If you have a trust account, that's extremely important to not only the state bar, but for your client. So you need to know when you can move that money from the trust account to the operating account. But the good thing is if the client has like legal insurance, most of the time you don't get paid out with legal insurance until the work is already done. So that money can just go into an operating account. But I think just understanding that nuance, like, hey, what's the difference between a trust account and what's the difference between the operating account? And, operating account being the operative word, right? Like that's what your firm should be running off of, and making sure everything is itemized and accounted for as it pertains to your client and their funds, because you don't want what takes you out to be a mismanaging of fund. And it can happen easily, it can happen so easily, especially when you're first starting out. So many of us are like robbing Peter to pay Paul, but keeping it together and just really itemizing everything and being organized as it pertains to your finances, I think that that's probably the most important thing.
Totally. That's a really good point. I have a friend who works as one of the Attorney Regulation Council lawyers here in Colorado. And he said, we have to prosecute a disproportionate number of solo and small firm attorneys because the balance of their trust account is so low, they're more likely to have problems. Because at least in Colorado, if you were to overdraw a trust account, a client trust account, there's something set up where it automatically triggers a notification to Attorney Regulation Council. At bigger firms, that never happens because even if they aren't managing things as well as they need to, they're unlikely to have that overdraw just because there's so much money in a larger firm's trust account. So they're not going to have that automatic notification. So it puts solos and small firms at a bit of a disadvantage, you could say, but it's also, all lawyers should be managing that money completely conscientiously anyway, but there's no room for error.
Absolutely no room for error. But were you taught in law school? I know I wasn't, like the business side, like how exactly.
No.
So it's like, where do you go to learn that?
No.
I had the mentor that I could constantly call, and Mike Brock was on my ass about it. Like, hey, like this needs to be in order. You need to make sure court can be fixed. You can ask for a reset. Like we can figure that out. Court will figure itself out. But that money part, you have to be on top of that. So it's so important, but I don't know how you teach it other than they should teach it in law school, but they don't. You don't learn it unless you're in it. You have to do it.
Yeah.
You have to do it.
Yeah. Or some random Denver lawyer's YouTube channel, I think is what our educational system is offering right now for lawyers. They really should teach how to run a law firm in law school. And I'm sure some do. I wasn't aware of anything like that. And, there's like a trust account half-day course you can go to that Attorney Regulation Council puts on here in Colorado. And there are a lot of tools you can go to We have an online self-assessment tool that we created in this state as well that people can use in any state. Maybe I'll put like a link in the show notes to that. But yeah, you have to be proactive about learning it all yourself. All that time you spent learning about the rule against perpetuities, like you're not going to get disbarred for not knowing the rule against perpetuities, but you could get disbarred for mismanaging client funds.
Yeah,
But we
and
don't learn
please
that.
post that link. I actually want to check that out.
Yeah, it's kind of a cool thing, and it's confidential. So you can just say, yeah, here's what I'm doing, here's what my firm's not doing. And it's all rooted in the rules of professional conduct. It's rooted in Colorado's rules of professional conduct, but we're modeled on the ABA rules. So it's a really useful tool for everybody. I'll post that. Okay. So this is really helpful for people starting their new firm. You know, not many of our listeners will have a story a story much like yours, where the Cochran Law Firm hands them the keys to the kingdom. But a lot of people will be similarly situated where they're like, okay, it's go time, and I don't know about any of this stuff, and I have to learn really quickly. So you have that conversation. You talk to Amari. You are pregnant. Did you feel, how did you, I mean, did you feel excited? Did you feel afraid? All of it? How are you? Where was
I
your
was
head
excited, but I was
moment?
extremely afraid because while they kind of handed me the keys, it was all responsibility. And then also I was trying to figure out, well, how are we going to get clients, right? They did all of that. They had a full marketing department. So with them handing me the keys, it was still kind of like, well, it's all on you now. Okay, you go figure out how to get the client. And I would ask, like, well, how did you guys do this? What did you do? And they would tell me, but I would still have to implement it and figure it out. So there was still a learning curve. So
Okay.
I think what was the most sobering for me was going from the Cochran firm and having an insurmountable amount of clients, right, to no longer having access to their marketing department. They were doing TV, radio, everything that you could think of. And it's just like, well,
Okay.
now this is yours. So what are you going to do? Are you going to spend your money on that? And keep in mind that the money that is now coming in, it's from the Cochran cases. But if you don't have the clientele to sustain that, which goes right back to the loop of, hey, how do I get these clients? Now I have to figure out like how to get clients. How are we doing that? And what I figured out, what was the most successful thing for us to do in order to get clients. My clients, we practice bankruptcy. So typically they're up late at night, they're going through the bills, they're stressed out. So you have to figure out your demographic. And they do watch the mail. So mailers for us. So those individuals who are being garnished or a lawsuit is pending against them or their home is being subjected to foreclosure, they're going to open the mail. I figured out very late in the game, like, oh, the mailers are the game changers, right? So we need to do mailers. Radio, TV, that didn't necessarily work. And then I no longer had a budget for that. So I had what was in the trust account and then the operating account at the time that they handed it over. But I had to make sure, like, hey, payroll, all of the things, the lease for the place we were staying in, I needed to make sure we were. Yeah. So I needed to maintain that, but then also grow it. And then also simultaneously, like, grow my business organically as well. But again, the mailers, trying to figure out how to get clients, which is a big deal when you are a new attorney, whether you're solo practice, mid-size, small size, trying to obtain clients. That's extremely important. The clients are your bread and butter. You need the clients, right?
That's right. That's one of the biggest mysteries, and it certainly was for me when I started the firm too. I like how your approach is kind of rooted in empathy. If you think about it, you're thinking about what your client's life is like, what they're doing, what they're worried about, when they're doing it. And that's what worked for you, is they call it like client intimacy, really knowing your client. So I think small firms, or any attorneys really, when they get that momentum for clients, then it's pretty steady after that. I don't see too many firms once they hit that tipping point, then having trouble getting clients after it. But what's really difficult is getting to the tipping point, getting those first few clients and first few reviews and referrals and things like that. So I want to hear more about what didn't work for you. I mean,
Yeah.
the radio, so the mailers worked. Radio and TV sort of didn't work. Plus, it's just so expensive. What
We
else did you
tried
try?
like social media, and I quickly figured out for my clientele, like you said, really knowing your client, I would listen to what my clients were saying. Like, I was up all night thinking about my bills. I was up all night trying to figure out, like, hey, I know I just lost my job. When would I get a new one? They would tell me I was up all night, or I'm working 2 jobs, or hey, I used to make $500,000 and now I'm making a
Yeah.
$250,000 now, right? So I would listen to what they were saying, and then I would figure out, like, hey, social media may not necessarily work for us. As of lately, it's kind of working, but that's a totally different story as it pertains to TikTok. But most people they're not going to like a post about bankruptcy because it's embarrassing. It's embarrassing.
Yeah.
So you don't
good
want,
point.
you may watch
Right.
it, you may read it, but you're not going to like it.
Right.
You're not going to share it because you're embarrassed. You don't want people to know,
Right.
like, oh, I may be struggling financially. So social media didn't really work
Right.
because my clients' finances are very private, especially when when it's a hardship there. So
Right.
we found that referrals, mailers, and then also the legal insurance, that was a game changer for us.
Yeah. Okay. Let's unpack a couple of things there. First of all, social media, uh, that's such a good point. You've got to think about it on a more granular level than just, like, oh, social media works for some firms, I need to start doing that. It has to be a right fit for you, and it has to be a right fit for your client, and it has to be a good way of connecting you. Like, back when we were mostly a litigation firm, I'd post videos about litigation, and but it was not necessarily, it was a good thing to do, and I'm glad that I did it on the YouTube channel, but it's not necessarily something that led to business for a litigation firm because, like, for for example, my most viewed YouTube video in the history of my firm is what to do if you get sued and you don't have any money. And I think it's a nice public service to sort of teach about that topic,
Exactly.
but it's not going to
Yeah.
lead to paying clients for your law firm if you think about it. So that video topic in particular. I want to hear about bankruptcy law because another thing is, some of our listeners will be thinking about how they can shift practice areas. But before that, since you mentioned it, let's talk about legal insurance and how that was a game changer for you. It certainly was for my firm. A lot of attorneys think, I don't want to bother with that because of the administrative time spent on what are sometimes low dollar value cases. But the reliability and the volume for us was a game changer.
Yeah,
So
I think
tell us
you
about your
nailed
experience
it
with
as it
legal
pertains
insurance.
to the reliability and the stability that it provided, right? I do not know how we got into legal insurance. I really don't know. I don't know how it was introduced to us. I don't know if we received something. I don't know if someone called. I don't know. Well, actually, you know what? I think I do know. A client asked, like, do you accept legal insurance? And I was kind of like, what is this you were
Oh.
speaking of? What do you mean legal insurance? And she was just like, I'm employed. I have legal insurance. And she told me the name and I went and looked into it. And I'm like, if she has legal insurance, we need to be accepting that, especially for our clients who are filing bankruptcy. A lot of times they don't have the funds or funds are tight at the outset. And we want to be paid for our services. And this was like a guaranteed way for us to be paid. So after a client disclosed that to
Right.
me, I went and researched it and, we figured it out. I think it was a game changer for us because it did provide some consistency and some stability as it pertains to our number. With bankruptcy, you don't get paid until the federal government says you can be paid.
Right.
The United States Trustee's Office which is under the umbrella of the DOJ. They will assign a trustee to the case, and then the trustee will normally disperse the funds once a case is confirmed. A case is typically confirmed 3 to 6 months on average after you have done all of the work. So that means after my firm has done all of the work, we're now waiting for the United States of America to disperse my money, right? But we've already done the work. And that's where Chapter 13, like a restructuring, if you do a 13 or 11, sevens are a little bit different. But the money is coming from the clients, but they have to pay the trustees. So, and they can pay up front if they want to, and you can avoid all of that. But most of these individuals, they can't pay anything up front. They have to pay in increments or installments. So having the legal insurance there that would pay us after we completed the work, like, hey, here's the petition, and they're paying us, within a matter of 2 days, and we just have to disclose that to the court, like, hey, we were paid on this case. It really changed. Yeah, it changed a lot of things for our office. And then the volume that they would start, they being the insurance companies, they started sending, more clients our way or more members our way. And we developed like a really good reputation with the insurance providers, the legal insurance providers. And we love it. We love it. We still love it. I would say most of our clients do not have legal insurance, but I love our clients that have legal insurance because it says a lot. It says they're employed most of the time, right? It says they're employed.
Yeah.
Yes. So it says they're employed.
It's an employment benefit.
It says that there's some stability there. That usually tells me like this client, not necessarily like, oh, they're just so sophisticated, but they have their shit together a little bit, right? So the likelihood of their case being successful is a lot higher to me. I look at things like that. You have legal insurance, you're employed, you're going to work, your case is likely going to work itself out, right? So those are important to me, and it's also important to my staff as well. But I think that consistency provided stability for our office, and that allowed us to grow, and to grow during a time like during the pandemic, and to grow during a time where it was kind of unheard of.
Right.
And people were asking us, like, how are you all still getting clients and maintaining? And I'm like, we have legal insurance.
Right.
And we were okay. Like, we were more than okay, actually, during the pandemic.
Yeah. Was it other bankruptcy lawyers who were asking you that? I mean, were bankruptcy lawyers struggling during the pandemic?
Yeah, we did see a few of our colleagues, like, actually close shop during that time. And I think a lot of times individuals can look at legal insurance, specifically attorneys, are like, hey, but you can make $5,000 from a case, right? And I'm like, yeah, you can. And then, but if you accept legal insurance, you're making half of that. And I'm like, but what you're telling me is you can potentially make $5,000 from that case. But if the case isn't successful, you're actually making $2,500 in bankruptcy. Like, they will tell us, like, hey, if this case dismisses before it is actually confirmed, you're only going to get half of that. And we're also relying on the clients to pay whatever it is into their case. So if the clients aren't paying, if they aren't employed, if they lose their job, you might not get paid. So for us, it was a no-brainer for me. But some people feel like maybe, I don't know, do you think some attorneys feel like they're dumbing down? Like, I'm worth more than that. Like, I should.
Yeah, absolutely. But it's like, and you know, when you get to the point of you have so many out-of-pocket clients that you have all you need and more, and you don't want to expand any more than you've expanded, then sure, maybe you can taper off the legal insurance. But I'm like, you're worth what the market says you're worth, first of all. And just because you're charging a high hourly rate to somebody, it's the same way in litigation. If you have to go after them for collections, that's diluting your hourly rate because you're spending your time or staff time on that. Whereas you don't have to do that with legal insurance. The other thing is, you know, I think it's worth explaining to our listeners. So many things are named similar. So many companies in the legal space have similar names. and sort of pitch what they're doing similarly. But there's legal insurance, which is an employment benefit. It's more common in Europe, but it's, I think, gaining some steam in the United States. These are companies like AROG, which is a German initialism, but it's called AROG, MetLife, Legalese. These are actual third-party insurers that pay you for doing work for their members. But then there are also referral services, some of which market to lawyers and try to get you to pay exorbitant amounts of money to them for leads or for clients. And there are some ethical issues with that they're always grappling with. And of course, for small firms, you don't want to drown in your own overhead. So it's important to make that distinction, that people understand legal insurance is not the same as like paying for referrals. Legal insurance, the attorney doesn't pay anything.
It's a game changer, guys.
Yeah, it's one of the great things about it. I sound like I'm on like we're not like sponsored or anything. We do work for legal insurance. We just actually think it's a good thing. But yeah, you have to be super efficient though, because you're filing claims with insurance companies.
Yeah.
Doctors' offices, I mean, there are entire companies that are just built for doing insurance billing for doctors' offices. I'm not aware of anything like that really in the law. So we have to file our own claims with the insurance company. You have to be super efficient about doing that, because if you are taking sort of low dollar value cases, you can't be spending too much time on overhead. Okay, how did you find? Oh, I gotta ask, what happens when there's a government shutdown?
Oh,
what happens to bankruptcy attorneys?
Had to address this issue recently, right? So the bankruptcy court was still open. They had enough money to remain open during the entire time. So we will get updated orders each week. Like, hey, if the government continues to be shut down for another week, then we're going to close the clerk's office, or we'll close the entire court. So they kind of fed us breadcrumbs over the course of the past few weeks during the most recent government shutdown. The government shutdown that took place prior to, it was brutal. Yeah. So the thing is, you can still file cases because we can file them electronically, but will they be heard? Will they be prosecuted? Right. But we were paid.
Will you be paid?
Entire time. We were paid during the most recent shutdown.
Okay.
So they had, I think, and I don't know this for sure, but I think if the money is sitting there, again, these cases that we are, most of the cases that we are being paid on, we get paid on the first of each month from the trustee's office, but it's for cases that I filed in June, so they have to disperse that.
What else do you think about the practice of bankruptcy law? Like if somebody listening to this is thinking about how they can diversify their practice, what do you like and what do you not like about
I love my practice
area?
I've always loved it because I get that instant gratification. As soon as I file one of my clients' cases, the automatic stay is put in place and I can immediately stop a foreclosure. I can call opposing counsel, you better stop it. You better not foreclose on my client's house, or you better, give my client his car back. So I love being able to do that. I think there aren't any downsides for me. I think there's a lot of red tape. I think a lot of people think bankruptcy is extremely easy or administrative, but if you don't know what you're doing, please don't come over here. I would say don't do that. It's a lot. You're dealing with a lot of financial institutions. You are dealing with a lot of, I guess, the unseen. There are a lot of emotions. You're dealing with family. You're dealing with legacy. You're dealing with people who may have owned a farm for generations and generations, and you don't want to be the reason why they lose it. You are literally saving individuals. But at the same time, you are negotiating with a Bank of America or Wells Fargo or the Department of Justice. You're negotiating with them. You're fighting on behalf of your client. I do debtors work. Bankruptcy, you can do debtor or creditors work. You can represent the actual consumer that's filing, whether that's a person or a business. or you can represent the creditor. So you can represent Bank of America, you can represent Wells Fargo, you can represent the United States, but we represent the consumer. So I would say if you don't know before jumping in, do some research, go to court, monitor a few things. It's not as easy as it may seem because you are dealing with hundreds of thousands, millions of dollars. You're not just dealing with a little bit of money most of the time. It's a lot of money, and it's a lot of, I guess, like legacy on the line and actual lives. It's not the same as like a criminal case and someone was like murdered, but you are dealing with the lives of an individual, employees, a mother, a father. You're dealing with the life of a corporation. You may be the deciding factor on if a business survives or if it dissolves. And that's a big deal.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a lot of pressure, but it sounds like you're a really good fit for that practice area. By the way, one thing we didn't catch from your story is how did you connect with your partner?
So she was actually working for the Cochran firm as well. So I was the managing attorney and she was one of my associates. We had already kind of joked about like, what if we like set out one day and did our own thing? And we would joke about that. And then when they presented me with the opportunity, my mentor was like, I think you need a partner. Have you considered anyone? This is not something I think you should go at alone. And I was like, yeah, I have considered someone. And I told him who it was. And he was like, yeah, that's great. Because we had other like associates there. And he was just like, as if you would have said someone else, I would have been like, no.
Yeah. And, you know, a great thing about having your own firm is you're in charge of your own time, subject to court and client needs. How have you found that experience to be? I mean, the work could swallow up your whole life if you're not careful, but you at least don't have a boss. How have you found that?
I have a daughter. She's 2. So within the past 2 years, I really figured that out. I really learned how to master that because I think the business was not necessarily swallowing me up, but it was consuming every part of my life. And I wouldn't take time off. And I would respond if the client responded to me at 10:30 in the evening. If I saw it because we're glued to our phone, I would respond. There's nothing I can do for you at 10:30 at night. Absolutely nothing. You don't need a response. So learning how to set boundaries, I think I have officially learned how to do that. So on the weekends and in the evenings, once I leave here, that's it. Okay, that's it. That's all I have to give for the day. And so I've learned how to do that. And that sounds so generic, like, oh, learning how to set boundaries. But you do have to really learn how to do it. And you have to actually stick to your guns and actually practice it. And I haven't gone as far as like removing my work emails from my phone, but I don't check them. I don't do that. Yeah.
Oh, nice. Don't even look at them. That's good for you. Yeah, I mean, sure, people say it, but it's easier said than done, and it's super important to separate boundaries. Okay, any books, podcasts, anything like that that you'd recommend to people who are thinking about starting the leap or who have started their own firms?
Taking the leap.
Starting the leap. I mean, taking the leap to start their own firms.
I would say watch your podcast, of course. And then I don't necessarily have any books or anything. The Bible, I would say for me, the Bible, that's the book that I constantly read and was holding on to pretty tightly during those first few years. I would say maybe just try to find not even an official mentor, but just someone that you can talk to. It doesn't even have to be maybe a friend or a colleague. I think friendship is so needed and it's so underrated when you're an attorney, but someone who has similar interests as it pertains to like what you practice and maybe similarly aligned. So maybe going through the same things that you're going through, maybe trying to hang their shingle as well so that you can compare notes, you can vent and really have some sort of camaraderie. I think that's so important. And that's something that my mentor impressed upon me. Like, hey, you need someone to do this with. I'm married, so I'm an advocate for partnership, right? And I think that's the same thing with business. I think partnership it just works. And when one of you are feeling tired, the other one is carrying the load, and, vice versa. So whether it's friendship or partnership, do hang your shingle with someone else, maybe around the same time. That would be the advice I would give.
Interesting. That's great advice. And a resource for people, bar associations, solo and small firm sections.
Yeah.
They have that for the American Bar Association. They have that in Colorado.
They
I don't know. I imagine Georgia probably has one as well. If you don't know anybody who's hanging their own shingle or who's done it recently, it's a good way to meet people who are similarly situated. Okay, this is my self-serving question because I build technology, and a lot of the podcast is promoting my product, but I like to ask everybody, in your dream world, what's a roadblock that you face or technology that you wish existed, something you wish technology could just do for you automatically?
Within the business.
Yeah. Well, I guess it could be life.
Technology can do
It
for
could
me.
be anything.
I feel like they already have it. Respond to all of my emails. That would be great if they could. I guess Chat GPT kind of does that, but it's not me. It's not me. So I guess just responding to the ancillary emails, not the ones that really need the substantive stuff, but the crap that you're just kind of like, what's the time for this? Or, hey, do you agree to this? Those emails when you're sending like, hey, I consent to this order. Hey, the simple stuff. If it can figure out like, oh, they're trying to ask you, do you want to meet at 2, 5, or 6? Computer technology, send an email. You kind of know me. Let them know what time I want to meet, and then put it on. Maybe that's something that can automate email.
I'm also a big proponent, that gets me thinking about, I'm a big proponent of the placeholder response. So if a client, especially in supervising other attorneys, if a client maybe they email you with a bunch of documents, could you review these? I have 10 questions for you. And attorneys can't always respond right away with a substantive response saying, here's my analysis of all the hundreds of pages of documents you sent me. But at least send them a response that's like, I have received your email. I'm working on this.
I agree. I send those emails all the time. I received your email. I'm going to review them. Once I review, I'll get back with you. Yeah.
Yeah. I call that a placeholder response, and that can certainly be automatic as well.
That would be great.
Okay, and so best way to find you if people want a bankruptcy attorney or want to follow along with a great firm in Atlanta, Georgia.
Yes, StantonandWorthy.com. Apparently, we're on TikTok these days per my business partner, and we're on all socials. Stanton and Worthy on all socials. That's the handle. And yeah, we would love to talk to any of you and get to know you and figure out if you need to file bankruptcy or not, right?
So the handle on Stanton and Worthy on TikTok is Stanton and Worthy. It was hard emailing you because I'm like, am I Stanton Worthy? Am I misspelling Shannon? Maybe not everybody has that.
So my legal assistant is like, everyone's saying that they see your videos on TikTok. So I went to my business partner. I'm like, what are you putting up on TikTok? She's like, oh, remember I asked you one day to like talk about things and outside. I'm like, didn't realize you were putting this on TikTok. I don't know what TikTok is doing, but people seem to get it and like it and understand it. So I hate gimmicky stuff. So I'm like, you didn't put anything gimmicky up. She was like, no, it's just you talking. But what I realized, like my sister told me like during Thanksgiving, she was like, oh, TikTok lawyers, like people love TikTok lawyers. And I'm like, are we a TikTok lawyer? She's like, no, but people love advice from TikTok, whether it's cooking, whether it's like mechanical work. People like advice from TikTok. So I guess that's why it's doing well there.
Interesting. Yeah. And again, it's like, is that a good place to find your clients? It probably is, because if somebody's algorithm is hitting on bankruptcy law topics,
right before taping this, I did a consultation, and the young lady was like, I had been researching bankruptcy, and then when I got on TikTok, she was like, it took me down a rabbit hole, and I found a whole bunch of like attorneys that did bankruptcy, but you guys were the only one in Georgia. So I'm like, oh, so they know, like, yeah, you were already researching bankruptcy.
Yeah, exactly. It's It's also one of the world's top search engines.
Wow.
You don't think of it that way, but so
No.
is YouTube. I think YouTube might be like the number 2. I don't know the rankings currently, but anyway, well, that's really interesting. I've kept you long. Thank you so much
Thank
for
you,
being on
Mark.
the show today.
Thank you, Mark.
This was really interesting. I learned a lot about your story, and it was great to talk with you.
Good speaking with you too.
All right.
Bye.
Take care. Bye.